Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Carpe Diem Living the Podcast. I am your host, Shane Gitmed, and today we have someone that I think just really needed to be on the show and has a lot of knowledge to share. Her name is Roz, and she's here to talk about how she became a plant-based registered holistic nutritionist, and she's based in Vancouver. So welcome to the show all the way from the other side.
Yeah, thank you, Shane.
So tell us about, like how you got started and your story on holistic health.
Yeah, for sure. So my story kind of sounds like pretty similar to yours, actually. And we just chatted about this before we started recording. But so I was in, I would say, high school, and I started getting some pretty severe symptoms, some pretty severe GI symptoms. And I had no idea what was going on in my body. Honestly, it was one of those guessing games where I was like, well, maybe I'm sensitive to this, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I just ate something bad. And then it just started getting progressively more severe to the point where there was nights and days where I'd be, curled up on my bed in a ball, unable to move. I get all the severe bloating, the gas, the diarrhea, all that stuff. Like, no one wants to talk about it, but a lot of people are struggling with it. And I did for almost 12 years, honestly. Oh. So it was all throughout high school. And I started going to different practitioners because I was trying to figure out what was going on. So I saw nutritionists, I saw dieticians, I even saw therapists thinking, maybe it's all in my head. And I saw literally every practitioner. And then I found myself at a GI specialist office on 2 occasions. And that was expensive. Like, it was a big investment. And I came out of there more confused than I was when I went in there. So the GI specialist essentially just said to me, hey, Roz, this is a classic case of IBS. And unless you want to get a colonoscopy at the age of 20, which is crazy, you should just try the low FODMAP diet. He didn't give me any guideline on how to do that. He just said, you can probably just search it up online. You can take a fiber supplement, which I did. I took Metamucil. You can, take a probiotic, and it was a probiotic that he was, paid to sell me. And then, just really get your stress under control. And that was just like, man, that triggered me because I was thinking, I'm in high school. I was at the end of high school, beginning of university, around that time frame. And, how much stress did I really have compared to what the average adult has? And I would consider myself pretty carefree. I mean, there wasn't a lot going on in my life. So it persisted for quite a while. And it was just those same symptoms. No matter what I ate, I was always feeling like crap. I started to get really, restrictive in my food choices. And I started to develop that really unhealthy relationship with food too, which is really not ideal at any point in our lives. But especially when you're in university and you're eating at, the food hall and stuff like that. So It was really, it was like a downward spiral for me, a really big rabbit hole. And then, after university, I kind of suffered with that for quite a while. Everyone kind of made fun of me when I said I had IBS. They're like, oh yeah, that means you have a lot of gas, right? And then, there's no one understood what it meant, right?
Right.
And we're just starting to understand the scope of it and the scope of the microbiome as well. But when I got out of university, I decided, enough was enough. I'm going to figure out what the heck's going on in my body. And then maybe I can make this my mission to share my story with other women who are going through the same thing. So I enrolled in school at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition to become a registered holistic nutritionist. And that was a year full time. But honestly, a lot of what I learned came after that. So a lot of what I learned was like my own undertaking, a lot of clinical research. I mean, I'm not a researcher, but I definitely was starting to dig through the research a little bit more on my own and figuring out what is the microbiome? How does it impact us? How does our diet impact our gut and all of our different microbes? And what is the best diet to follow for, really combating this thing that we call IBS and all these other GI conditions. So I could say just before I enrolled in school, I became more of a plant-based eater. And that kind of triggered a lot of, changes in my microbiome. So when I was going through school, I was actually really starting to see a lot of changes, but I was also understanding why I was seeing those changes. So it was kind of cool for that transition to come right before I went into school, or back to school, I should say. And it all started to make sense. It all started to make sense that, I was fueling my body with the right foods. And, most doctors, like we talked about, only get 10 hours of nutrition training, even GI specialists, which is insane. They know so much more than I will ever know about, prescription medications and, how the body works. But when it comes down to the food, a lot of people aren't talking about it. And that's where I saw that big gap in the market and the big gap in, where there needs to be education and where there needs to be empowerment. And that's what, brought me to where I am now as a nutritionist, helping other women down that same journey that I was, but I'm helping them skip over all that other stuff that really is just going to confuse them and really just make their situation worse.
Right. No, totally. And I love that, every person I talk to in the holistic field, they always have had, their own situation where they're like, how can I solve this within my own health? And then it leads them down to what they're currently doing. And because honestly, like I was the same way, like all they told me was Miralax, Metamucil, and like all this other stuff. And I was just like, what? Like I can't even tell you how many like containers of Metamucil they gave me, and my pantry was full.
Oh yeah.
I had zero interest. Like my gut was telling me, I don't think you should be consuming all this Metamucil. Like it was just too much. And then on top of that, most of Metamucil is orange flavored. And I was still dealing with my own, food sensitivities at that time. So I'm like, okay, I have a vitamin C sensitivity. Why would I drink orange Metamucil? I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So, but that's insane that, for 12 years you dealt with that. That's a really long time to just kind of be like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to, hope for the best and try. My God. Let's see, how long did I deal with it was for about 5 years. Yeah. Mine was 5 years of dealing with it. And that was torture. And you're, getting a colonoscopy. Did you get the colonoscopy?
No, I didn't. I didn't because I knew it wasn't as severe as, he was trying to say that it could be. And like it's always a diagnosis of exclusion or syndrome of exclusion, meaning they have to rule out all the other crazy stuff. So as long as you don't have inflammatory bowel disease or colon cancer, it's just IBS, right? And that's what the umbrella term is. And I was like, I don't know. My mom was with me at the time at that appointment, and she's like, I don't know. I think you should probably be fine just trying a couple things out. And I did. I never ended up getting the colonoscopy. Most women, like almost every single women that I've dealt with or I do deal with in my practice, they have had a colonoscopy, or they are going to get one. Or they get an endoscopy or whatever it is, right? And they get all So, I mean, it's really important. Don't get me wrong. It's really important to make sure that there is no cancer, there is no inflammatory bowel disease. But most of what we're dealing with now and in that 5 or 10 year period that, where you're struggling, it's a long time coming from your childhood and the way we grew up eating and all the different things that have changed our microbiome from a long time ago. And we didn't realize it was creating that perfect storm.
God, I know. Like, cause you think about it and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to go back in time. Like, what did I consume? And you're thinking, oh my gosh, all the processed stuff, all these different things that have toxins. And yeah, it's crazy because I'm noticing it more and more that women in their 20s, that's when they're starting to see, like for me, it hit when I was 19, 20. Yeah. And then boom. And then since this last, I don't know even how long it's been. I've just been like, obviously maintaining, and I found the answers. So, oh my gosh.
And so stress has a huge role in it too. Like, and I think that's why it starts to also happen in your 20s, because stress actually physically changes your microbiome and the composition of your gut. Yeah. So, a lot of people don't realize that you hit that age where it's like, again, it's that perfect storm where everything you've done before is surmounted into this perfect storm to create what is going on now, but the stress kind of triggers it. I find that, and again, it's in that university period where you don't think you're that stressed, but it's making an impact.
Right. And the thing with the microbiome, so like, it was funny because before I even got into holistic medicine, I was like, what in the world is that? Like, what does that even mean? So can you just dive in a little bit? Like, what exactly does microbiome mean, and like how the changes that you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So the microbiome is essentially defined as the collection of bacteria that are in and on our body. So there's about 38 trillion bacteria. So that's about 1,000 times the number of stars that are in the Milky Way, just to give you context. So that's how many bacteria we have living in and on our body. They carpet our mouths, our armpits. Most of them reside in our colon or in our large intestine, or what we call the gut. So that's where most of them are. So it's the biggest population there. But yeah, like I said, they're everywhere. We cannot live without our microbiome. We can live without our spleen. We can live without, one of our kidneys. You can even take the intestine out, but you physically cannot live if you get rid of all these bacteria that we have. So that just goes to show how important it is. And there's everything that we eat, everything that we do, our history and our stress, the water we drink, the medications or the Advil that we consume, they all play a role in impacting our microbiome. So the key to a healthy microbiome, and this is what we're just starting to uncover in, in medical and nutrition literature, is the diversity of the plant foods that you eat. So the greater the amount of plant foods you're eating, the greater the diversity, meaning a wide range of them, including things like legumes and beans and whole grains, which, a lot of people demonize and really say that they're, you should cut them out. A lot of paleo say that, right? All of these foods and all these plant foods, they equate to the greatest diversity of, bacteria in your gut. And the greater the diversity, the more resilient your gut is. So each different kind of bacteria is going to break down and help you process a different kind of food. So they essentially feed off of our food. So they help us break it down. They have the enzymes to do that. So if you feed them, they'll flourish. What you feed will flourish. So if you're feeding, your microbiome, all these different types of plants, you're going to have the opportunity to increase that diversity there. And the greater the diversity, the more resilient your microbiome is to, pathogenic bacteria or invaders such as E. coli or salmonella, or even parasites and that kind of stuff. So it's really, it's complicated, but it really, you have to think about it like a team. Like say you were on Survivor and you wanted to have an alliance. You would want to form an alliance with, a team that has a really diverse skill set. You wouldn't want to have a team where everyone was good at chopping wood. You would want a team where one person's good at chopping wood, one person can collect water, one person can get you food, one person can build a shelter, right? So it's kind of like our gut. Every different bacteria has a different role in the body. A lot of them break down our food. Some of them help process our hormones. There's a specific area in the gut or specific bacteria in the gut, I should say, that help process our estrogen and our progesterone. Some of them are involved in the immune system. So 70% of your immune system lives in the gut. So 70% of your immune cells are living in the gut.
Wow.
Some of them help fight off disease in other ways. Some of them are, connect with the brain and a part of that enteric or second nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system that, connects directly to your brain and your spinal cord. So they all have different functions. So we want a really diverse microbiome. And the more we limit our diet, the more we cut out foods, the more we really start to change our diet to have fewer and fewer foods is what I'm seeing, in a lot of women. The less diverse our microbiome is, the more susceptible to disease we are. So there's a lot going on there, but it's super fascinating and I could talk about it for like 5 hours.
Yeah, no. And see, I'm learning a lot right now, domino effect. And it makes sense because so for me, it just kind of went all downhill, right? First it was, first it started up as food sensitivities. When I found out I was allergic to like 90% of foods, I was like, okay, I was told to cut it out. So I cut, and this all happened when I hit 20. So after I cut all that out, I'm over here trying to maintain my allergies. But while my allergies was being maintained, that's when my gut issues happened. Then when my gut issues happened, I'm like, well, how can I heal? I can't eat any of this stuff. It was just kind of like, I'm hearing plant-based is great, but I can't eat this berry or I'm going to have hives. Like, I was just like, I don't understand, I honestly thought I was like, I just need to like be reborn, like start over. Because I was like, I'm like, how am I supposed to live? Like, this doesn't make sense. So when, it wasn't until I saw a holistic doctor and he told me the FODMAP thing too, right? I was like, but I was so deathly afraid. I was like, Dr. Auer, like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I almost had like that. Yeah, I did have like a bad relationship with food because I was so traumatized. I was scared. I was like, what if I eat this and I have hives for a week? Like, what am I going to do? And then you're telling me don't take Benadryl because it's affecting my histamine stuff. It was a mess. So luckily, through a lot of cleansing, like through herbs and all of that, it readjusted my histamine levels to where it's healthy now. So where I can tolerate most foods, like I'm slowly building my list back up, thank God. And now I'm like, everything's kind of regulating. So I had to like decondition what I was told. That's another thing I think is huge is so many people's, their main doctor, their allergy specialist, their GI doctor are telling them so many different things. And they're just kind of like, I don't know what to do. So luckily, with what you do with your program, you kind of, you cut out, the learning curve and you're like, this is what you need to do versus people like us who had to kind of just trial and error. And we just didn't know. So
Oh, for sure. And that is the biggest problem I see is that everyone, by the time they come to me, they're like, Roz, I've tried everything. Right. And I'm like, okay, but have you tried, a whole food plant-based diet rich in a bunch of anti-inflammatory foods? And oftentimes they haven't, sometimes they have, it just needs to be tweaked. But for your case, the allergies, and that's something I see a lot. And like allergies are on the rise too. And one of the clients I deal with, she's she's in the same boat that you were in. And it's one of those things that it takes a long time. And then a lot of people don't realize that, you know, allergies are directly related to a damaged gut, right? So we have damage happens to that mucosal layer, the layer of, or the outside boundary of your gut. And once, you know, it becomes permeable, and you've probably heard of the term leaky gut, those foods can leak out into the bloodstream. Your body attacks them as if they're, you know, a foreign invader, and then you develop an allergy after a while. So that is directly related to the gut too. And I'm so glad that, you know, you found the right help, because otherwise you just end up on this hamster wheel of, you know, never ending protocols, never ending diets, never ending, you know, and I know that fear of food is so, so real, and it takes a while to repair, but it is important to seek the right help. And I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's why I'm just like, I want to help anyone that's dealing with all of this. And I mean, I even learned like allergies and anything that comes out to the skin. So another thing that happened to me was I developed eczema, like at some point. And I was just like, what in the world? Like, you know, there's another thing. And then I figured out it's because anything, do you listen to Medical Medium or follow him at all?
I have listened to a lot of, Anthony Lynn's stuff for sure.
Yeah. So for him, that's why I was like, okay, liver cleansing. So I'm big on juicing, and juicing has significantly helped me in that way. So it takes a while to really, you know, find what works for you and, you know, do your research, especially with the misinformation you were talking about. So I'm just glad, like, you know, once you find that, you know, protocol, then you just stick to it and it gets better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So after you figured out, you know, what was going on with you, so it took 12 years for you to heal from everything?
I'd say from like the moment, I was one of those kids that had all the stomach issues, like every single, or all the GI issues, I should say. Every time I ate something, I'd feel crappy after, unless it was vegetables. So yeah, I mean, like I struggled, I'd say from like mid high school to like after university is when I struggled. And that entire time I had no idea. So yeah, it was a long process, and I was always on the hunt for the next thing that was going to help me. And it's definitely a big, you know, hole that you kind of jump into, but yeah, it was a long period of time.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So then after you found out all the things, what protocols did work for you? So after you switched your food, like what other methods did you try that was part of your healing process?
I dabbled in the low FODMAP diet. Like, I mean, honestly, the biggest thing was that jump to plant-based. I didn't actually try a lot more. And I know that you're probably curious, like, oh, what else did you try? But that was the biggest thing that saved me. I think instead of, you know, going down that, for some people like yourself, obviously, once you develop those allergies, you have to go to a certain protocol before you can really reintroduce them. Right. But for myself, because I was at that point where everything was uncomfortable, but nothing was really like severely damaged, the fact that I was able to go from, you know, leading a very normal, like standard, I don't want to say standard American diet, but I definitely ate everything under the sun, to a whole food plant-based diet, essentially. I mean, it was pretty much vegan at first, like less so whole food plant-based, but like pretty quickly after that, I got there. I think that saved me, because we go through, you know, this dialogue of eliminate the food to eliminate the symptoms. And for someone like, again, like yourself, that is a completely valid thing to do. You're getting hives, right? You have to eliminate that food. That is an allergy food. But for a lot of women, they're just getting uncomfortable digestive symptoms. So they eliminate the food to eliminate the symptom. And that's the common dialogue that's, you know, prescribed these days. And that's fine. But again, when we eliminate a food, we eliminate plant-based diversity. And really what the protocol should be, and this is what I think I ended up doing, and as I pushed through kind of that initial pain of introducing all this fiber into my diet and all these new foods I wasn't eating, you know, it's you have to slowly reintroduce these foods like you're training a muscle. Like, this is one of my favorite concepts that I stole from one of my favorite GI doctors, who's actually like a plant-based, you know, nutrition nerd as well. And, you know, training your gut like it's a muscle. So your body can be trained, or your gut can be trained, and your microbes can be trained to handle certain foods, and you have to slowly introduce them. So it's like lactose, right? So most of us are lactose intolerant, but we're really meant to be, just because you know, we're supposed to wean off our mother's breast milk, and then that's supposed to be it. But we've developed, you know, we've really developed our gut so that it continues to break it down, just because we've trained it. But most people are not lactose intolerant to the point where if you put a milk dropper on their tongue, they're not going to have explosive diarrhea. But you know, there's a threshold that exists. So you technically can train your gut to handle more and more lactose. You just have to do it in a systematic way. Not that I don't ever recommend that. Because I personally don't believe dairy should be in the diet. I mean, everyone's different, but so you can do that with other foods. You can take something like, I don't know, a specific legume or bean, And if it's giving you digestive symptoms, that's actually not a sign of inflammation. That's a sign of sloppy processing. So your gut isn't able to handle that food, and you have to find that threshold and slowly work your way up. If you go to the gym, you're not going to lift 50 pounds right off the bat if you haven't been there in 2 months. If you do that, you're going to get all these crazy muscle aches and pains, and you're not going to go back for another 2 months. Yeah. So then if you go to the gym for the first time, you want to start with like the 10-pound weights, and then you work your way up to the 15-pound weights. It's the same thing with your gut, right? And what happens is we go through that vicious cycle of we eliminate the food to eliminate the symptom. And then we try and eat it again somewhere down the line, and we get these vicious symptoms because like all the GI distress, classic symptoms like the gas, the bloating, that kind of stuff. And then we go, whoa, what's going on here? Can't eat this food anymore. It just doesn't agree with me. And then you cut it out again. And then you go through that cycle again and again. And the reason you can't digest it is because your microbiome is not attuned to breaking it down. It doesn't have the bacteria diversity to do that anymore. So I think that saved me because instead of cutting out all these foods, I added in plant-based diversity. And that's the key. You don't have to go 100% plant-based. You can start to add in different foods, and that abundance aspect is really going to save you. Whereas, before it's too late and before you get all these crazy symptoms that are actually signs of inflammation where, you have the allergies and stuff like that. Before it gets to that point, if you're able to add in that plant-based diversity, you might actually be able to prevent that, that end product of, where it's a little bit too late and now things are a lot harder and a lot more complex.
Right. And I always say this too, like, it's not about, it's also about like the quality, not just the quality of the food, but the quality of water. So I'm very big on cause anything that goes into your body. So like for me, like the whole switch of, I'm kind of thankful I had my gut issues because that's what kind of got me into like, okay, if I can improve the food I'm eating, how can I improve the water I'm drinking? Okay, how can I solve, all the toxic things in my home? So it's kind of like every part of my life was getting cleaned up like 360. So I'm kind of like, I would have never gone here had like my gut not like reacted so crazy. I could have saved myself, some hospital trips and doctor's appointments, sure. But I'm like, at the end of the day, like I'm very happy with where it led me to living a very like healthy, toxic-free life. Goodness.
It's so important.
Yes. So let's talk about, your 12-month program. So you call it the Plant-Powered Gut Academy, which is super cool. So tell us about that and like, how you came up with that.
Yeah. So honestly, that's been a recent project of mine. And it was something I realized I was like, man, I can touch so many more women's lives and I can help so many more women with a community like this. And it's something I wish I had. If I had this, when I was going through all this stuff, I think I would have cut through all that, all that time and that energy and that effort that I had wasted. I mean, not wasted, you learn so much, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to provide that to women so they know that they're on the right path. So essentially, it's a 12-month program where I'm taking women through the A to Z of transitioning to more of a plant-based diet or a plant-forward diet and helping them really conquer their symptoms. And most of them have IBS or IBS-related symptoms through evidence-based nutrition. I'm all about evidence-based anything. I mean, I always leaning into the science. I'm always leaning into, what is the research saying and taking the guesswork out of, well, will this work for someone? Basically the research is pointing toward plant-based diversity, and there's so much more to it than that. And that's what I take my clients through. But we start with the basics, essentially, and we have coaching calls and we have live teachings, and there's a Facebook community, and it's an awesome place where I literally, by the end of it, I'm hoping, and that's my goal for my clients, is that they'll never have to see another nutritionist again. They'll never have to see another naturopath because they know what's going on in their body. They're empowered about the why and the how and what to do moving forward, and they can handle those symptoms and those problems if they ever arise in the future. So it's pretty cool. Everyone who comes in there is from a different background. Some of them are plant-based. Some of them have no idea what plant-based looks like. Some of them are younger, some of them are older. It's an awesome community, and I'm loving interacting with these women because I'm seeing myself in them and the stuff that they're going through. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I swear, I wish I would have known you like 5 years ago because that's when it was really bad. Like it was like really terrible. And I remember my gut issues were at its worst when I found out I was pregnant. So I'm like, oh my gosh, because one of the things that happened was I was scheduled to have a colonoscopy. And then a couple weeks before my appointment, I was like, oh, I'm pregnant. I can't have this colonoscopy. So they're like, okay, we're going to have to wait until after you have your son. After I had my son, I was like, all right, I got to move from the East Coast back to California. So that delayed. So it's like huge life events kept pushing and pushing my colonoscopy. I was like, I guess I'm just going to never know what's going on. Man. So throughout all that time, I was just dealing with gut issues, eating very limited foods, which wasn't helping, my immune system and everything. But yeah, I think your academy, like that's wonderful, because at least like women like us, we went through it feeling alone. Like you think no one understands, because more than likely you're not really, your friends, usually you're the only one within your friend group.
Oh yeah,
dealing with all of that. And they're just like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so sick? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like I've just been
tell me.
Yeah. I was like, I grew up super healthy, never had problems. I could eat whatever I wanted, was still fine. Like it literally blew my mind on like what was going on. Little did we know like how much we didn't know, regarding the body. Sure. And, do you just assume, everything you're told in the doctor's office is valid? And I think, spreading this awareness is great. And I mean, for 12 months, it's so nice to know that for a year, they have you in their corner, like the long term.
Yeah. That's the whole point, because I work with clients, one-on-one, and I find unless they have a very specific goal, like the gut, it takes you how many years to get to, the place where you are now? It takes you like I ate the same way for 20 years. So if it took me 20 years to develop that imbalance, it's going to take at least a year for, my clients or whoever's dealing with the same symptoms that I was or similar symptoms in order to see actual lasting change. Because unless you have a specific, very, very specific goal that you want to work on, it takes time. And that's a really big thing that I have to communicate to women, because they're like, okay, cool, I'm ready to change my diet. And they think that plant-based eating or plant-forward eating is like the be all end all. And for sure, the science is pointing toward the fact that it is one of the best ways to eat to help repair your microbiome. But there's more to it than that. As you said, it's the water, it's the stress, it's your toxic lifestyle. It's how much how much time you're dedicating to work and movement and outside of that, and all that different kind of stuff. Like it's a huge multifaceted thing. And that's why I'm in holistic nutrition and not anything else. So
I call it an onion. I'm like, literally, it's like layer after layer after layer. Like it just goes on and on. Cause I've seen people where they're like, oh, my skin seems to clear up, I'm good now. And I'm like, no, you gotta maintain. It's not just a one. Cause I mean, another reason why, Western medicine, people just like to take a pill is because they just want that magic pill. And they think that's it. They just want to, I'm not going to call it laziness. I just know they just want something that's going to fix it and move on. And anything regarding holistic health, like you said, it takes time, it takes commitment. You got to, this is the long haul. Like you cannot just give up after a couple months. Like it's even lifestyle. Right. Exactly. It's a lifestyle. So, oh my gosh. So with your clients, okay. So after the plant-based, okay, hold on. So you mentioned when you're not working with clients, you like doing a lot of outdoor activities. Yeah. Would you say that other than outside, so what activities would you say are great for, I guess, okay, so when you're on a plant-based diet, a lot of people's energies fluctuate, right? Like some of them are like, I feel really weak because, they're not used to eating all plants. Like I did a 10-day raw fruits and veggies cleanse, and that was intense, along with with the herbal cleanse. Yeah, I did it through a detox specialist, and she's an herb like goddess. Like she literally knows everything with herbs. But I noticed my energy levels were shifting. So I guess what would you recommend someone like getting back into shape while they're on more of a plant-based diet because of their low energy? What's one way to kind of reintroduce, physical activity?
Honestly, it's going to be person dependent. And I would start slow with, don't go straight to the hit is what I'm trying to say. Like, don't go straight to the intensive exercise. Always start with gentle movement. And something that's going to restore your mind too. So honestly, I always would say, start with something like yoga, start with something really gentle. But the energy thing, obviously, as your energy fluctuates, it's also time to look at, is this a temporary thing, or is there something missing in your diet? Because usually if there is low energy, you don't want to push it. First off, you definitely don't want to push it with exercise and with movement. If you are having low energy, definitely some form of movement is really important. But look at like what's going on in your diet that, that needs to be addressed if there is consistent low energy. And that's oftentimes something that does need to be addressed because there probably is something lacking in the diet. But I would start with gentle movement, and then it depends on the person, right? It really depends on what you enjoy doing. I think movement for me is less about the what, and then it's more about the how are you enjoying that? What is that doing for you? And because there's more to exercise than just ticking it off your list. Mm-hmm. If you don't enjoy doing it and it's not something that's conducive to your energy levels, like you were just saying, and to, your lifestyle and to who you are as a person, then it's really just going to be another chore on your list. And if you're trying to get into shape and you're really trying to push your boundaries that way, yes, listen to your body, start with something that's gentle, but really find something that you enjoy. And for me, that's hiking and lugging my butt up mountains and skiing and stuff like that.
So a great area for that. So you have all that around you.
I know. Yeah. You won't find me in the gym in the summer. Cause I'm mostly, but Whistler and Vancouver or whatever. So you got to find something you love, but I'd say, you have to listen to your body and what that means. The more you push it, the more your adrenals are going to be stressed out. And stress, again, changes the microbiome. That physically does change the microbiome. So understand, that as you move forward with that exercise and with that movement, you need to be paying attention to your energy levels and to what your body needs at that time, because, we're fed the discussion that we need, or the concept that we need to be, doing this intensive exercise to lose weight. But if you're stressing your body beyond what it needs at that moment, it's actually only going to, it's not going to like you for that. So you have to work with your body instead of against it, especially when we're talking about movement.
That's key for sure. So on a plant-based type of diet, what are some of your favorite, recipes? What are your favorite go-to snacks? Just because, some people are, they have to inch their way into this, right? They're like, I can't go completely plant-based, because there's that misconception of plant-based, you're just eating lettuce. People think it's so plain, if they just think it's not going to be that great, it's bland, or whatever the case. So what are some of your favorite plant-based recipes?
Yeah. So one of my favorite, she's not fully plant-based anymore, but one of my favorite recipe blogs is Minimalist Baker. And I do eat a lot of stuff that she posts. So I love to do, honestly, anything bowl style. So Buddha bowls, poke bowls. I poke. Honestly, poke is so good. And I make a plant-based version of that, obviously, but the more colors, the more vegetables, the more, whole grains, legumes, that kind of stuff. And all of the flavors and stuff, that's my favorite stuff. Is usually, I love Asian. So like I said, I do a lot of bowls. I really love a good plant-based pizza night. And there's so much you can do with it. I don't even know where to begin. I can do a plant-based ramen. I love to do sandwiches for lunch, a chickpea salad sandwich instead of a tuna salad sandwich, that kind of stuff. Lots of wraps. There's so much to it. Honestly, anything that you can eat, on an animal-based diet, you can make that plant-based. And usually what happens is you add in all these extra foods that you've never really thought to try before. In the last little while, I've started making sprouts at home. Homemade sprouts are incredible, and they're so easy to make. And I add those into everything. I had a Thai curry last night. Again, I love the Asian food. And I added sprouts to it this morning because when I had it for lunch, I was like, why not? Right? And snacks, I really love, I'm trying to think, I have smoothies as a small smoothie as a snack often. I make a lot of energy balls. I do a lot of fruit. Fruit is super, super helpful because of the fiber. You don't have to worry about the fructose. And I know a lot of people freak out about that. So fresh fruit in the summer is my favorite thing to have as a snack. And for breakfast, I'm usually a smoothie girl if I'm not doing it for a snack. Smoothies are my favorite way. I literally add in a huge handful of greens. And I switch that up to get that diversity in. Chard, collard, kale, beet greens, all that kind of stuff. Or you can do a chickpea or tofu scramble or omelet. Honestly, good old peanut butter and toast with hemp seeds. It's endless, right? And that's the thing. You open up your mind and your world to all these new plant foods that I would have never eaten. I would used to, stick to the same 15, 20 foods and same meals on repeat. Now I'm forced to look at all these different options. And I'm like, I can, make that plant-based, or I can try, this plant-based, and it's pretty cool. So Minimalist Baker is awesome. And She Glows is incredible as well. Both of those cookbooks are really, really good. And there's always something worth trying, and there's endless possibilities. Also, buffalo cauliflower. If you haven't tried that, you need to get on it. I
have not. I've been hearing about it, and I'm like, that sounds so good. Cause I remember growing up when my mom would try to give me cauliflower, I was like, oh, what in the world? I liked more broccoli.
So
So, but now like, there's cauliflower pizza, and like, I know when I go to Whole Foods, I feel like a kid in a candy store because I'm like, what's this? And I'm just like, there's so many, like you start to think like, wow, there are a lot of alternatives to like some of our favorite, like foods. You don't have to do it the traditional way. And that's honestly, I think that's the biggest key is like, as long as you're open-minded, you're willing to try different things to replace because it's better for you and you'll obviously digest it better, then that's, all the power to that. So I think, trying all the different recipes. Do you have your own garden? I'm curious.
I do. Well, okay, this is a new thing for me, and I live in a condo in North Vancouver. So my partner, though, his family has a bigger house in West Vancouver, and what we did this year, because his mom doesn't really use this one section of the backyard, it's south-facing. We built a 25-foot by 5-foot garden bed on the ground. It's like just a slightly raised garden bed. We grew every leafy green you could think of. We grew beans, we grew zucchini, cucumber, we got bell peppers, we've got beets, cauliflower, cabbage, we've got everything in there. And it has been the most amazing experience of my life. I don't think I could go another summer without a veggie garden. It's been incredible. So now, how can I get myself into a house next time I move, where not a house or just something where I have a plot of land or a little bit of space in a backyard, maybe I'm in a basement, see whatever it is. Growing your own food is such a great way to connect to the earth, to connect to, your food. We've lost so much touch with our food systems. Half the time we don't even know where our food's coming from or how far it's traveled. Mm-hmm. And it is really cool to be able to walk into your backyard and pick all the ingredients for a salad or stir fry or whatever it is and be like, man, I grew that. And it's just, everything tastes better.
And it's funny because back in the day, I would have never had confidence in growing my own food. I was definitely one of those people that's like, if I get it from the store, at least I know I got it from the store. But when you think on a deeper level, you're like, but wait, where was it? Like you said, where did it travel from? Where did it come from in general? So for me, I think now I'm like my parents, they actually built their own garden in the back too. So I'm like, okay, great. And so they're starting to grow more. So my goal is when I buy land and build on that land, I'm going to have a whole section for a garden. That's my dream right now, is just having that freaking garden. So, but for now I have sprouts and Whole Foods, but it's okay.
Yeah, I know. And you know what though, what I would say for anyone who's listening to this right now and wants to grow their own food, but they don't have space, start with sprouts. Start your own, make broccoli sprouts, alfalfa sprouts. All you need is a jar and some seeds and a place to put them in a bowl. Honestly, it's really cool. There's a podcast on Plant Proof Podcast, or is it Ritual? I can't remember. We'll have to get it for you. But anyways, there's this podcast by this guy who's the sprout master, and I can never remember his name, but it's a really, really good lesson for anyone who literally just wants to grow something. You don't have to have a green thumb. And sprouts contain so for example, lentil sprouts contain 3 times the amount of vitamin C and 2 times the amount of antioxidants than normal lentils do.
Wow.
So it's a really powerful way to get more nutrition in and grow something that you become really proud of, and you can add them to anything. So I would say start with sprouts. There's tons of tutorials online, or you can find that podcast if I can find it that I was talking about. But tons of opportunities to grow sprouts just on your own kitchen counter.
Wow. I love that suggestion, because I'm over here thinking I need all this space and planting all these things, but sprouts. And that's the thing is I think I've never eaten a sprout in my life. So I think I need to get on that, especially with all the benefits it comes from or comes with.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And sprouts, you can find them at the grocery store if not, but it's fun. It's so cheap to grow them. And broccoli sprouts, for example, the highest antioxidant count out of pretty much any plant food in the entire world. So
wow.
The more you know.
Yeah, no, that's great. I definitely want to try that, especially when I get settled in, because I'm just always trying to find little ways to really get me more into the holistic, because I've already solved my gut issues. I mean, it's a journey, but at least I know what it is. I know how to keep it at bay. And with my food allergies, it's practically gone. So, so yeah, dude, it's been quite the journey for us all, for sure. But that's awesome. Okay. So we have a tip on that. So where can our listeners and viewers find you online so they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on Instagram as Plants First Nutrition. And then I have a free Facebook community that I encourage everyone to join. It's the Plant-Based Solution Facebook group, or you can just search the Plant-Based Solution on Facebook. And then the Plant Powered Gut Academy, but you can also, I'm trying to think what else I am on. I'm mostly on Instagram. I do Facebook. I have a Facebook page, but I'd say if you look for the Facebook group or find me on Instagram, those are the 2 key places to find me. That's where I'm most active.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to be following for like tips and things because I mean, I just love learning everything, like well, no matter what it is, because it's just endless. There's just so many things. Like I didn't know the whole sprouts thing. I'm like, what? That's wild. All you need is a jar. Like everyone has space for a jar. Like that's like really not an issue. So
for sure.
Awesome. I learned a lot and I can't wait to dive more into holistic recipes because like you said, there's just so many different combinations and so many ingredients you can use. So that's one thing I definitely want to dabble in more. But
Absolutely.
so everyone, she's going to be in our insiders group as well. So if you want to talk to Roz and just say, hey, and learn from her, she'll be there too. So thank you all for listening and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.